M.U.L.E. Sit back and enjoy your wealth and power, oh mighty ruler. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
And I'm Joe.
M.U.L.E. stands for Multiple Use Labor Elements, and I can't imagine anything more exciting for a kid to hear.
Well, I think that's like maybe one of the more, and I agree with you, but I think it's going to get a lot less exciting for kids as we get more into this game.
And of course, we don't have to keep calling it M.U.L.E. or M.U.L.E.com. We can call it M.U.L.E. Going forward. Are you okay with that?
I concede.
Great. And then
I don't know if that makes sense, but
sure, yeah. No, you wanted it to be something else, and you immediately
we were
caved.
arguing about it. Yeah.
M.U.L.E. Before we talk about the game at all, though, just one thing in my research that I usually save for the end, but I think it's worth talking about at the top here. It's a pretty big headline. M.U.L.E. was one of the first 5 games from brand new company Electronic Arts.
No way. I had no idea, even while playing this, that's who made it.
Yeah, it's in the game.
I missed it.
No, that's a reference. Remember?
I get it.
Yeah, okay, good.
Took me a second.
Yep, you concede, right?
I challenge everything.
Okay, very good. Yeah, this is a pretty big deal, I feel like. But also, anybody who's, aware of video game history or anything, that should be a sign that this game is also very old. Because EA did not become a company in 1990. They became a company in like 1981, 82 or something like that. And that's about how old this game is. This game was released on computers first and foremost, and is now just like part of this wave that we're getting recently of just, well, I feel like this can be on the NES because anything can be on the NES now. And that's exactly what happened here. M.U.L.E. is a resource management game. The core gameplay revolves around managing 3 different types of resources on a newly colonized planet where you basically have to manage buying, selling, and trading goods. The goods being food, energy, and Smithore. And it plays in a bit of a board game-like fashion. It kind of reminds me of the kind of board games, Joe, that we were playing during our board game nights a few years ago.
I was thinking the same thing while I was playing, and I did not get to. Usually, I can scrap together a crew to play multiplayer. I was not able to this week. But the whole time I was playing this against the computer, I was like, this would be so much better with like 3 other people and like playing it like a board game.
Yeah, and we'll talk about why, but I agree with you completely. This game is, even though you can play with 3 other computers, you have to play with 4 players, by the way. There's no like just 1v1 or anything like that.
Yes, there is.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, So I just said I couldn't get people. I did. My girlfriend and I did try it at first, and after like a minute, my girlfriend was like, "I don't think this is my type of game," and I was like, okay. Like I said, an episode earlier, that she's not a big video game person, so this is probably like the most boring thing that she could just jump into for her second ever video game.
I feel like that's so interesting, though. We should really talk about what the game is, but like I feel like that's so interesting because that makes me question like a lot of the strategy elements when you just have 2 players playing, but. Of course, let's talk about the game. It is a game that works on a turn-based economy. So basically, one by one, players make their decisions, and the decisions that you make in the game revolve around owning plots of land and producing goods on those land in order to survive seasons, and then use your surplus, or rather your the resources you no longer have to buy, trade, and sell these goods with other players to accumulate a score where the player with the highest score at the end of the game, aka the one who was able to best manage all 3 of their resources appropriately, will win the game. So the way it works is you first select a plot of land, and the way that happens is a grid of a map, moves in square boxes from left to right, and any player at any time can say, I want this piece of land, and then they own it, and they can't buy another plot of land in the same turn. So it becomes a race to make sure you get a good plot of land, like a mountain or a river. You want to be in a good location, and preferably probably near the general store too, because you'll have to walk to and from the general store to your plot of land. Joe, let's pause here for a second. Selecting the plots of land, did you have a strategy for this? Did you have a thought process that went into how you were developing your land?
Well, all right, so as far as which plot I select, yes. I mean, so like you said, you want to pick a good plot, like whether you're near a river or if you want to be near water if you're going to farm. You want to be near in the mountains if you're going to mine, and you want to be on the plains if you're going to try and generate energy. Now, I'm not sure exactly how those affect your output. Like if I were to get a plot of land in the mountains and try to farm, how much less stuff I would get, or how that would work. But intuitively, it seems like that's what you want. And secretly, I think that's like kind of all there is to selecting what to select. It's like there's 3 types of land, there's 3 types of resources, and one coincides like 1-to-1 with each other. But then there's also this and I don't have a strategy nailed down here, but there is something interesting about the way that you select where the computer just shows you here's plot 1A, here's plot 1B, 1C, it just goes right down the line and you're selecting. So there's something there that's strategic that I haven't fully locked down yet about do you select something early or do you wait until everybody else has selected, see what they've done, and now there's nothing they can do, and now you can select what you want based on what everybody else has. That's that. So that part, that's an interesting gameplay element that you wouldn't be able to really do in a board game. I mean, I guess there's probably some way you could figure it out, but this is it's reliant on you have 1 second to select this plot of land before okay, no one's buying this. We're on to the next plot. So yeah, I think that there's a lot of potential for strategy there. It's hard to really come up with a strategy when you're playing against 3 NES AI computer characters rather than other players.
And it's interesting because the strategy is one consistently throughout this game that as each turn goes, and turn would refer to all 4 players or however many players you have, each completing their own turn. When you get to the next selection of land plots again, well, now you can't select 4 tiles that were previously selected. Those are all owned, and so you have less to choose from. And by the end of the game, you only have the only choices remaining. So it kind of becomes a game of lockout where you say okay, well, this person desperately needs food, and this is the only food tile left. The only one that would produce near the river. So I'm gonna make sure I grab this. What's interesting about that, of course, is that if everybody needs food and everybody wants the land that's still directly on the river, the AI in the game, not even the computer players you're playing against, but just the computer itself, will give it automatically to whoever needs it the most. Now, I find that very interesting. All ties in any area of choosing at the same time or selling off things, the computer always gives it to whoever is deemed to need it the most. What do you think about that, Joe?
I mean, my gut reaction to that is I don't like it because it takes away kind of your ability to monopolize something or to really use this economic system that's in this game to your advantage. But then the more I think about it, I do see the merits of it also, because all right, what we're talking about right now is just selecting the plot of land. And that if there's just one plot of land that you 2 of you need, I can see them wanting to do something where it doesn't just come down to whoever has the fastest reflexes is going to be that's not this kind of game. So it's not it's it's maybe not a perfect way to do it, but I think it's trying to stop people who are just quicker from just like kind of bullying the person that's just not as fast on the reflexes.
And after every player selects their plot of land, then you go into your individual turns. And this is where a timer suddenly appears on the screen. It's basically just a bar that depletes like an hourglass. And you have to do everything you want to do within that timer. If the timer runs out, you won't be able to do whatever remaining tasks you have. So anything you want to do in the game has to happen on this particular turn, has to happen within that timer. More than likely, the most important thing you're going to do is you're going to go buy a mule, a M.U.L.E., if you remember. That is one of those multiple use labor elements. In this game, not so much, but in other iterations of M.U.L.E. on like the computer, they look exactly like Star Wars AT-ATs.
Really?
Yeah, like to
that's
the T.
Interesting.
And
okay,
I'm not sure why that's allowed, but it's kind of funny that like EA still works with Star Wars.
Yeah. Maybe this is like what LucasArts was like, okay, that means that they know Star Wars. Like that was like their interview is like, oh, can you make an AT-AT or AT-ST, which one? And they're like, oh yeah, they made these AT-ATs before. Maybe let's give them the Star Wars IP.
Right. And so you buy your mule, and you do that in the store. So you're actually now walking around as a character. You go in there, you buy your mule, and then you have to decide, well, what's this mule going to do? Is this mule going to generate food, energy, or Smithore? And you pay a fee for that as well. And then you take it out of the shop, and you're now on that overworld map screen again, and you walk on over to the plot of land you just bought, and you say, okay, this will now be where I'm going to place this mule here, and we're going to generate food here. Then you're going to leave that plot of land, go back to the general store, and probably just go into the pub. The pub is the way to end your turn. It's an automatic way to win money. It depends on how the more time remaining is, the more money you win.
Oh, I didn't even realize that the time correlated to that, but that makes so much sense now.
Yeah, so obviously it's just like I did everything I need to do, and I'm going to end my turn. You can go wampus hunting. Did you go wampus hunting at all, Joe?
I did not go wampus hunting. Tell me about it.
It's a fool's errand, okay? Because any kind of money that you might get out of this will not benefit you in the long run, because you have a higher potential to waste your time and run out of time doing anything, and you need money to buy goods in this game, of which, of course, allow you to win the game. So why wouldn't you just finish your turn rather than go try to catch a wampus? Like, the payout is higher if you do catch the wampus, but it's not easy to do.
Right. I wonder if there is some like reason, if you're like in the deep strategy of this game, if there's ever a reason to do the wampus hunting. Maybe there's like a different play style that we haven't thought of or something. Also, speaking of wampus hunting, have we mentioned that this is an alien planet and you play as a bunch of aliens? I just want to make sure people are clear on that.
No, because we didn't mention all the alien characters that you can
I'm sure
play.
We'll get into that. I just want to, as we're talking about this, I just want to make sure it's not like, we're not like just like on Earth here.
Yeah, we're not playing Civilization. We're not about to build the Roman Empire again, but this time with George Washington. And then
I never played.
There's also, at the beginning of your turn, there's a chance for a random event to happen, like acid rain or pests can take over your crop.
Yeah.
And I think there's not earthquakes there's planet quakes, which sound bigger. Like earthquakes, I never put together that they were talking about like the entirety of the Earth, but when you call it a planet quake, now it sounds like literally the entire planet is shaking.
Yeah. Right.
Which is violent.
Well, what you're talking about now, too, these environmental things, that also informed my strategy of where to pick my plots of land. Because at one point I had, I don't remember exactly what it was. I might have had like a farm and an energy producing thing, or maybe it was two farms up in the north. And an acid rain storm came through, and it kind of goes in like a horizontal line across like 1 or 2 tiles. And having all my stuff in one area means that it's more likely to get hit by what, like, it's almost like you want to separate your stuff just to have contingencies. So like that factored in as well. Like I didn't want like 2 farms right next to each other, which the river runs vertically, so I don't know why I would have done that anyways. But it's good to have things on like different sides of the, I don't know if it's the whole planet or of the land, just to spread it out a bit.
And after everyone has successfully completed whatever they want to do with the mules, or just go right to the pub, or try to catch a wampus, we head into the auction part of the game, where it does show like how much you yielded in these different categories of, again, energy, food, and Smithore, and then how much were depleted by the end of that season. And then basically like a goal line of like where you needed to be. And if you weren't there, it's time to start buying up some food. If you weren't generating food, it's time to start buying. And if you had a lot of Smithore, it's time to start selling. And this is the most interesting part of the game. This is also the crux of the game, so I understand why it's the most interesting part. Like this is the only part that really involves any kind of interaction other than strategic blocking of other players' plots of land. So in the auction, the way it works, you can decide if you're a buyer or seller. Sellers go up to the top of the screen, buyers are at the bottom of the screen, and it goes one by one. So first with food, then energy, and then Smithore. I believe that's the order. Anyway, the sellers are on a bar, which shows them, like let's say their current price. One food, $60. And the buyers are at the bottom, and they're saying one food, $10. The 2 bar graphs have to meet together. So in other words, the players have to meet in the middle in order to start trading. So if sellers have food that buyers desperately need, what's the incentive to come on down, right? But
exactly,
if you have too much of a product that nobody else needs, what's the incentive of anybody to buy from you?
Yeah, it's really interesting the way they do it, because I can see if any kids got past the boredom of some of the other stuff that like a kid might have in this game, this kind of teaches you like some of the basics of like how like an economy works.
Yeah, supply and demand.
Yeah, and like it truly is when you have a resource and like nobody really needs it, and like say you and I are playing together and we both have this resource, it becomes a race to the bottom. And this is where I think it could be like much more interesting to play multiplayer, because the computer kind of just like does like whatever one pre-programmed thing. It's like, okay, we need this, they have this, we're gonna go here and stop. But I could see it being like more auction like, if it's like, yeah, all right, I'm going to come down to $20, and someone's like about to come up, and you're like, well, I'm going to go down to $19. And it's like, okay, now they're going to hit you first. Well, I'm going to go down to $18. And it's interesting. It could be interesting for both sides in that way. And it's just what a unique and interesting way to present this too, with these like little aliens walking down the screen and walking up the screen.
Yeah, I really appreciate the line bars, because that is like something that I wouldn't like if they would have presented it in a different way, right? If it would have been like, oh, you press the A button to bid up, right? Like with like actually holding signs, right? And increasing your amounts, and the highest bidder gets whatever the person offered. Like I don't think I would have came up with this, whereas like I could come up with the inferior one. This is a very smart way, albeit pretty boring for kids, but this is a smart way to visually represent like coming together on a trade agreement. Okay, so this is the Phantom Menace of video games, where it really rewards people who are into trade negotiations.
Well, and I think that they seem to be very aware of the like this economy-based game is going to be boring for kids, and I think they did actually a really good job of presenting every element of this game in a way to up the kind of interest to it, where it's like, yeah, you have these alien characters, and like instead of it just being like, yeah, your character has more money, your character is better at farming, it's like these alien characters with these quirky little descriptions, and then instead of just instead of just selecting a plot of land, you've got this sort of like race where you got to get to it. And instead of just deciding, okay, this is going to be farmland, I'm going to pay for what I need in farmland. It's like, no, you got to like walk into a little store, get a little robot mule, outfit him with what you want, and then like walk him across the map over to the thing. And then finally this auction thing, instead of it just being like, I'm going to bid this much, it's like this little, all these characters on the screen kind of doing this dance where they have to meet at wherever the agreed upon price will end up being. It's like they definitely did good work at like trying to make this more interesting for kids.
And after the auction, you're shown the scores. It shows you first place, second place, and so on. And then you go into selecting plots of land again. So you kind of repeat that loop. Of course, now with more limited resources, right? You probably have less money, you have less land to choose from, and you need to think about which resource you need to produce in order to capitalize on what everybody else has or doesn't have, and what you desperately need in order to make sure you meet your quota. The one issue I have with this whole loop is that it's not really a series of choices. So much as like what's forced upon the player because of the way the game is set up. So for instance, everybody gets a plot of land. Like it's not like certain plots cost more, and so therefore you know like the prime river location for the food to generate the most is now more expensive, and so it rewards players who win more. If anything, it actually rewards players who are behind to keep them competitive. That part happens, and then when you get to your turn, well, of course you're going to buy a mule, and of course you're going to make them produce a good. The good is just whichever one you decide you need on, but most likely every game is just going to start with, depending on your land tiles that you grabbed, you know, one food, one energy, and then either another one of those or some Smithore to capitalize on some, you know, good production that you had in those other two categories. But it's never like, oh, well, this turn, I don't think I need a mule, like I should save my funds or something like that. Or this turn, I'm not sure which one I'm going to produce, because the land tiles make it so obvious. You know, Joe, you broke down kind of that triangle system of the river, the mountain, and the flatlands. The land that you've been given or selected or lucked into is like, now that kind of defines like which mule you're going to optimally place there. Like, yes, you can still go, you can still go around it, right? And be like, no, I really do need food, and it sucks that I got a mountain this turn, but I need a mule for food. But you're most likely not going to win the game if you do it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that might come into play more when a lot of the tiles are taken up, and you have no choice but to take a mountain thing when you need food. You know, like maybe more people are doing that in the end game. Also, maybe more often when there's more players, you know, because I feel like it's just easy enough to kind of like outthink this computer, you know?
Yes. And then the other thing, you can transfer your mules as well. So there could be some strategy there of, you know, oh, I accidentally placed a food in the mountains again. I got to transfer that out. I'll bring the food to the river plot I just acquired, and then I'll go grab a new mule and make him the mining one. But that's only if you're bad at the game. If you're good at this game, right? Like if you know what you're doing, then you don't really have a need to transfer, because again, you transferred most likely because of the locations that you had on hand. So unless you really did just start off in a bad location and need to adjust accordingly, the transfer thing is kind of not really something you need to factor in at all either. So the game really does just become the auction, because otherwise it's just, well, this is the land I grabbed. I'm going to produce with this mule, with this type of element, and then I'm going to go into the auction and hope that I can sell my products for high and buy low.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like that is kind of what the game is. And like I'm doing a lot of this exercise imagining what it would have been like playing with 3 other people, and I can imagine a lot of it would be kind of like not arguments, but like tension during those moments. But everything else, I mean, I guess there could be tensions during the land selection part too, but like everything else like is just flavor, really. I mean, I guess there's that time limit if you don't get your mule back in time, if you're going to do a bunch of things. But, like, do you really ever run out of time unless you're trying to do too much? Is it ever really that much of a threat? I mean, I guess it does affect the money you would get from the pub, but yeah, it does kind of all come down to those auction things. And I see what you're saying too about the like it not being there not being like that other layer of like, oh, this plot of land costs more or something like that. And I think the idea was probably like, oh no, you're setting up your own economy by, as the game goes on and the months or whatever they are go by, like things do become more valuable, like naturally, literally more valuable, where like more people are trying to get them, and by getting it, you'll get more money because you can sell more things for higher prices or whatever. Like that's interesting to me, and we haven't even talked about the fact that like not only do you have to think about your economy, but like the whole planet's economy is affected too, and like you can screw up, like you can just all lose if the whole planet's ecosystem fails. So like there's a lot of that stuff to factor in as well, but I'm not sure how much it really like moment to moment like is on top of mind just because of the way the rest of the game is designed.
And we should mention that while there is a we're talking about the mules and going into the store and checking in on your plots of land and auctions and stuff. This is not a pretty video game. This is not. This does not put graphics at the forefront of anything. This does look like a computer game at a lot of parts, especially the kind of computer game you might think of as like an educational computer game. It has that look for me. I don't know about you, Joe, but just like some games I would have played at a school setting would look like this. And so I know it's like amazing I got to play video games at all at school, but this isn't helping its cause. Now, I don't feel like this is educational, and I did have some fun manipulating the computers into doing my bidding, but I just don't think like it doesn't really have a lot going for it in terms of like putting itself against other very fun and visually striking NES games. I get that this was a computer game and this is just a port of that, but you have to imagine that it was ported for the reason of capturing the younger audience that the NES grabbed.
Right. And I wonder, like, did the NES game add a bunch of the like kind of colors and bells and whistles for that, or was it kind of? I mean, I know you said that the mules looked different, but was anything else like significantly different?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Like it looked even more bare bones in 1983. If you can believe it, some of them are like like stick figures and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like the boxes are really, like the land plots are really crude, and the mountains are just triangles.
Because like you're saying like, oh yeah, they're so much more crude because they're stick figures. Like I can't even think of something more stick figure than the stick figures in the NES game.
Right,
like,
right.
It must get even worse.
It's almost like any like Atari 2600 games. Every
see
character
like E.T.
You wouldn't call them a stick figure, but like they have that shape.
Yeah.
And so that's what it looks like on these older systems. But again, it's fine there. I think for the NES, it could have used a graphical update. Now let's talk about just like the not the competition part of it, but just like the overall winning goal, like the winning criteria, right? So the goal is to accumulate the most wealth, right? It's not about like whoever has the most food wins. It's not diplomatic. It's all about whoever has the most wealth. So is that compelling? Like, we were joking about Civilization earlier, but Civilization has like multiple different win states that you race for, right? Like one person might be like, I just want to do world domination, and so they're focusing on their military, but then another person's trying to like, build enough wonders or have a diplomacy or launch a land on the moon, right? It's like there are different criterias for winning in Civilization. Here it's just about the most wealth. Does that make it too like obvious on your turns of like what you should be doing and not spending that much and focusing on production?
Probably. I mean, again, I'm gonna sound like a broken record. I think it might feel a little different playing multiplayer, but like definitely playing against a computer, it's very obvious. I think it'll be just as obvious playing multiplayer, but you're playing against everyone else who finds it equally obvious. So that way it might be a little more competitive in that sense. But yeah, I mean, like it's definitely, it's not that it's missing a layer, but I would appreciate another layer to it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, by the way. Like, I do think if I was playing this with 3 other people, they would all just collude against me, and I would believe that nobody's buying my goods because they all talked before they came over and said, yeah, we're going to screw Mike over tonight.
Yeah, I already mentioned this to Sean and Chris.
Good.
If we ever play this, that we've got to collude against you.
Yeah. And then, choosing your character, of which these are all aliens, you can be the Mectron, the Bonzoid, the Flapper, the Flapper. Like, the Flapper was from the 20s? Yeah.
Yeah, the Flapper was my second playthrough. I was the Flapper.
And do you know why you were?
I'm trying to remember. They started with more money,
yes,
right?
They start with more money. Everybody else gets an even $1,000. But the Flapper gets $1,600 and the Humanoid gets $600.
Yeah, but I mean, I assume that it's not perfectly clear, but there are other advantages for each race, right? Like the Legite I did the first time, and I just assumed based on the description that it like lives on the plains and it uses its legs to run across plains, that it would be good at like farming or maybe not farming, actually, maybe energy. Now that I think about it,
I think that's incredibly optimistic, Joe.
So you don't think that there's other like
the manual does not
hint
at that at all.
Wow. So
there's even a whole like Q&A section, and it doesn't talk about it there. I wouldn't count on it.
I just assumed, man. That'd be very disappointing if it's not true.
They had tips on the beginner game. That is to always get land during the land grant section. Duh. Avoid moving through mountains and the river whenever possible. They will slow you down. And I mean, like, we gotta back up. The timer thing, this isn't hard. And you're not moving at a snail's pace when you're in the mountains or the river. Like, you're gonna be just fine. The timer maybe should have been, if they wanted to make it a game that was like a race and you only have like 12 seconds or something, right? Like, it doesn't feel like that. I'm not saying that they gave you all the time in the world, but I never felt like, better not cross that river, right? Like, it didn't matter which way you exit the store.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of does feel like you have all the time in the world, to be honest. Like, it's just like, I guess you are losing money for all the time you're spending, so like there's risk reward there, but yeah, I'm never like, oh no, time's running out.
Another weird thing for the manual always refers to the computer as the Nintendo.
What?
Like,
I think my parents wrote this manual.
Yeah, as if another, like, so let me try and find like one line here, but okay. Why don't I always get the plot of land I want in the land grant? It may be because you and another player are both pushing your buttons at the same time and he or she is getting the land. That happens because the Nintendo figures out who has the least amount of money, land, and goods and gives that player the land. It also says, why can't I watch the Nintendo-controlled player install a mule? Is it cheating on me? The answer is, since the Nintendo never makes mistakes, it's not much fun to watch.
Well, I will say that, I kind of guffawed at it at first, but when I was a kid, I didn't think I ever even knew it was called the NES or the Nintendo Entertainment System. I just called it the Nintendo. I called it Nintendo. I'm gonna play Nintendo, and then the Super Nintendo. But then when I got the PlayStation, it gets even weirder. I called it the Sony.
Oh, that is weird.
It's really, me and my brothers, we were just used to the Nintendo, so I was like, yeah, I'm gonna play Sony. It wasn't until PlayStation 2 came out, I was like, oh, it's Sony. Of course, like, Sony's not the name of the machine.
Right,
it's
right.
the company.
But also,
I always said,
like,
yeah, I'm playing Sony.
That company is just so much, they make so much more. Like, Nintendo only makes video games, so I get it. But, like, you might have, like, a Sony TV and a Sony surround sound system, and then you're just like, but I'm going to go play Sony. Yeah. That's funny.
We all said it.
And I totally know what you're saying, and I think a lot of people did this, Joe, where they called their console the Nintendo. I actually just think it's weird here that the way that they're referring to it is like that it's also, the Nintendo is the game, you know, like the Nintendo is the computer, it's the dealer. Like, technically, I never thought of like the cartridge that you put in the Nintendo now being like controlled by the Nintendo. I think that's the part that's throwing me off, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's it's also the word the
Yes.
makes it like a little weird too.
They never miss a the, by the way. It's always the Nintendo, which is good because if they said Nintendo, they'd probably get in a lawsuit with Nintendo for implying things about the company. Just some development stuff here. M.U.L.E. was originally called Planet Pioneers during development. Do you like that name better?
I mean, coming at it from the perspective today, I think M.U.L.E. is a cooler name because it's quirkier and different. But I mean, Planet Pioneers is that's a sexier name.
And they EA admitted that the game is largely influenced by what board game, Joe?
Is it by Settlers of Catan?
No, much older. Much more classic.
Much more. Oh, what's it called? I don't know. Risk.
No, Monopoly.
Monopoly.
Yeah, think about it. Land acquisition.
Yeah.
Right?
It's completely, it makes perfect sense. But
production
I'm just
advantages.
Too much of maps.
You can only start building houses and hotels once you own a group of land. So clearly that's what they wanted to add into M.U.L.E. was eventually, and we should talk about that, right? Like they could have added so much more to like the plots of land you own, but instead you just buy a mule at the store and then bring it on over to your land, and then you don't even like really get to like see how the land's developing or anything. Like, it's really, really bare bones there, and it's an old game. I get it.
There should be more stuff though, like just to like supplement or just like add to that. You want to now you've got your farm and it's producing, but like you want to produce more. You can bring this other thing over there and like, hire more, robot workers or something, like, but then I guess that what that is no, just start a new farm and it does the same thing, but it's all horizontal growth, no vertical.
Early versions of the game featured an auction-based land sale, which caused a wealth feedback loop where the wealthiest player just kept gaining all the money and land. Now, that
doesn't seem realistic.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like Monopoly, right? Like, that is the problem in Monopoly. Yeah. And it's probably the problem here. They could have just made it cost more for the nicer ones without an auction part, right? But they did they did assume that the best way to fix it was to just make sure that each player gets a free plot of land each turn.
Mm.
Did you pause in this game?
I didn't even consider pausing.
Right, because you have a timer and time is precious.
Right.
You pause with select.
Interesting. Does it make a sound?
I didn't check for the sound. I should have. Kind of hate myself for not doing that, but pausing with select, I'm not trying to make a big deal out of it, but it is wrong.
Like, yeah, I think I've gotten more comfortable with it because we've seen it kind of several times.
Yeah, sure. No, I know. They're young. They haven't learned everything yet. And this is coming off of a game that was played on a keyboard. So who knows what you paused with back then? Did you just escape and close out of the software?
I mean, I guess like nowadays, I don't know what Xbox or Nintendo does, but like PlayStation doesn't have a pause button. It has like an option button. But like back then, the button's name was pause, right? It was written on the controller. Am I crazy?
No.
Which
controller?
Well, I'm thinking the NES controller.
Oh, no, it's start and select.
Start and select. Okay, not pause and select. So you're right. Yeah.
But I like that. There should be a pause button. That's what the PS6 is going to have. They're going to bring back pause, and it's going to have a great sound.
And it's not going to be a button. It's going to be a crank.
You know what I was thinking, actually? Super quick tangent, but I have to tell you now. PS6 controller. You know the like touchpad area that they had on the PS4 and now the PS5? What's that called? Do we know? Does that have an official name? I mean, it does have an official name, but we don't know it.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. I would call it the touchpad.
They need to take that part out and put there like a LCD screen.
Mm-hmm.
That's like
I can see that happening.
Basically, it's taking the Dreamcast VMU, those little like Tamagotchi that were also memory cards. Genius idea, by the way. Taking that and now putting it in the game so that your controller has this LCD screen on it, so that like when you're away from the PS6, you can play on that little screen.
Interesting.
On the controller. It's kind of like a Switch, but not really, because then it also has like a little like menu and other things you can do right on that LCD screen when you're playing on the console.
And the controller itself is the portable gaming system, so then you can it still feels like a PlayStation controller, kind of like the Portal.
Yeah.
But the problem is, like, would it be big enough?
No, I know. So that's what I was thinking is like it's meant only for like being in the same room or same house. Like you can't take it to go.
No, but I just mean, is the screen big enough?
No, that'll be terrible too. It's just like the VMU, the Tamagotchi screen with like there was only like 64 pixels on that thing, But man, every time I find out about a cool little thing with the Dreamcast VMU, I'm like, I can't believe we lost it. I can't believe we like. I get it. Tamagotchis were at their peak around that time, but like I don't think we cracked that nut yet. I think there's more juice to be extracted from that seed.
I'm into it.
Okay. Back to M.U.L.E. What else?
The essential games list. No. I don't know. I mean,
did you say no because you're not allowed to do that?
Yeah, I can't do that.
Okay, yeah. I'm just trying to, because that I was fine with it, actually. I was like, yeah, sure,
the
let's do it.
essential games list.
No.
Oh, come on.
No. I'm serious. We can't do it now.
Okay.
You've made me aware of how much power I have, and I can't just give it away now. It's like in this game, right?
So
I'm aware that I have all the food.
I think that this game is sort of...
no sequels for this game, Joe.
No
M.U.L.E. 2.
Really? I'm actually am kind of surprised, because it seems like something that like would have been good on like the 80s computers, and that they maybe would have like there'd be like a niche audience for.
The sequel's hanging right there for them too. Moscow Mule.
Ooh. Or like you put a few other letters between those dots and you got muscle, M.U.S.C.LE.
Oh, it becomes a wrestling game.
Yeah. Yes.
You develop your local wrestling chapter, and you're competing with other wrestling chapters to like control regions of the United States to become the nationwide.
You're a spheroid or a legite.
No, of course. Sorry, I didn't say United States. I meant alien country.
Yes.
It was a planet produce. It was a robot producing planet like any other. Did you get that reference?
What other kinds are there?
Okay, good. All right. I tell you what, Joe. Now we can do
the essential games list.
Listen. M.U.L.E. I know for a fact there's one of you out there that grew up with this game, loves it to death, is so angry that we didn't cover all of the possible strategies, and that this game's really deep, and we didn't even get into that you don't even need friends because there's different difficulty levels for this game that have different durations. And yeah, there's tons more we could talk about, right? This isn't a Let's Play kind of show, so I'm just going to get right into it and say that M.U.L.E. surprised me. I really like what this game is doing, even if it is so basic by modern standards. I just like it when all of a sudden you're playing through a library that is like shmups, platformers, action games, racing games, and then all of a sudden you're just like, what do I even like put this down on in the giant nostalgia spreadsheet? Like, what genre do I put this on? And fortunately, we have a tabletop section, so I think I'll put it in that. But like, wow, did not expect such a simple, fun game to give me like, a few brief minutes of satisfaction and fun in my day. I will not be putting this on the essential games list. It's way too dry, basic, and lacking any kind of like larger strategy. But if you could get young kids into the idea of playing this game, maybe in their third grade classroom, I bet like there's a lot of critical thinking for them to have here. And again, that's not a knock on the grand strategy of this game. I am sure that there could be a global mule championship that happens every year, and it's very intense, and I would finish in last place. That's not what I'm arguing. I'm arguing that there's just so little manipulation and things to produce in this game that ultimately it doesn't offer a grander experience of exploration, which is what it's asking for. You're settling, you're buying land plots on an alien planet, and you're barely doing anything with those plots other than placing a mule on them. Like, come on, guys. Let's be real. Joe?
Yeah, I also really found this to be a really interesting experience. I enjoyed it. It's surprising how much strategy like you can find with such a simple with such simple tools in this game, and I do think that this game has a lot more value than I initially gave it credit for when I booted it up. But yeah, in the end, I think for what we're trying to do in M.U.L.E., this is one of those instances where I think the video gaming industry has evolved past this. And if this is what you want out of a game, this is a cool thing to go back to and say, look how we did it back then. But I think we've evolved enough where like it's missing too many things that you would have in a game that came out today or even like later in the 90s where you have this economy, you're trying to manage your resources and whatnot. But it's a fun game if you like that thing, but definitely not on the level where I could say it's essential. So not essential.
Well, I'm glad that even though we talked about how basic it was, we both came to the conclusion that we enjoyed it because that's refreshing.
Yeah, refreshing is the word. That's how I felt about like just playing this game. Like you said, it's different than anything we've played in a while.
I want to play just a game that's just the auction part where it's just people coming together in the middle to agree on things. Like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what this game is.
No, I meant like I want like
the rest of it doesn't matter.
I want like the everybody votes channel from Nintendo Wii, but I want that in this form where like
it's not this form, but it's reminding me of it a little bit. I don't know why. The more I'm thinking about it, it's not even like it, but it's a Jackbox game called Split the Room.
Okay.
It's not like this at all.
What do you do? No, come on. You can't leave us hanging.
What you do is you have a room full of people, everybody playing. You have to it comes up with like a scenario, and you have to come up with like the two things you have to choose from. And the more you split the room, the more points you get. So if the two things you come up with, one is the obvious answer, then you're going to not get any points. Like if everybody's like, yeah, of course I would take chocolate over, broccoli. It's like, well, yeah, you picked two bad things, but you want to pick like two things like, oh, you're stranded on an island and all you have are blank and blank. And you have to blank or blank. And you have to pick the two things that you think will split the room.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah. How much not like what we're talking about is that now that I've said it out loud?
I want a game where, you just have to walk as far away as possible from another character. Not meet them in the middle. I want to walk away.
I'm doing it right now. I'm walking away. Can you tell?
You don't sound like you're getting further away.
Well, that's because you're on my mic that's attached to my head. But the podcast, it'll sound like I'm getting further away.
Oh, okay, cool.